as you can see, this isn't your cuddly storybook dragon. This dragon is often wily. It's a digital beast that's powerful, unwieldy, and prone to biting back. For the past 10 to 15 years, I've managed various projects across different like government, nonprofit, and even political action committees. But what I've noticed is that one thing is abundantly clear, is that if you don't have a consistent web content process or strategy, you will risk being bit by this dragon. And I love Game of Thrones. I don't know if anybody else loved it. So before I dig in and get into the details, my name is Nneka Hector. I am Director of Web Development at DS Federal. A year ago, I also founded a web consultancy called Open Pixel. I co-lead and organize Drupal GovCon, and I'm a board member. And last but not least, I'm a mom and a wife a mom of two and a wife. So what I'll cover first, I'll talk about content strategy, the goals and objectives of it. Then I'll talk about web content management and what goes into that, like governance and the processes and content audits that you should be doing. And then I'll talk a little bit about the digital tools that I use throughout the days of when I do my work. So there are three main common challenges that I often run across, and I've kind of grouped these into the three main ones that I often see. The first one is the act of content management. I've managed different types of teams. I've managed teams that I had a whole team and their sole responsibility was the management of the web content. And then I also have development teams where you have one person who's embedded, one person responsible for web content management. And then sometimes you have it where it's delegated to the content editors. But what I know for sure is that if you don't have a good content management practice or processes put in place, you will run into issues and it will make it a lot more difficult. The second one is consistency. And when I say consistency, I mean consistency with your tone of voice and how you write your content. I mean maintaining consistency with accessibility, look and feel, especially when you have different players and they're working in different silos. You have different departments that are doing different things. Sometimes consistency and maintaining that can be difficult. And then the last one is planning. We spend so much time, most of the time you're doing a redesign or you're maintaining an existing website and you spend so much time just maintaining it. And you don't actually take a step back and plan for it, right? Look ahead. And so hopefully in my talk, we will kind of go over some of the things, the processes, the strategies that you should put in place to circumvent that. So I have to define content strategy. It defines how you're going to use the content to meet your business goals and also satisfy your user needs. It answers the who, how, what, and when. It guides your decisions, and you should set benchmarks based upon that. It is one important thing is that what works for one organization will not work for another. So your content strategy is unique to your organization. Included, so one of the big parts of your content strategy are your goals. Though we all have goals. I know I set goals for my life, you set them for your job. You should also have those goals set for your web presence, and they should closely align to the goals of your organization. So they should be big, they should be broad, long term. And then we know your objectives, right? They define what you want to achieve. They should be SMART. And we all know what SMART is, right? The specific, measurable, relevant. Did I get that right? Specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound. And I love a mind map because it actually allows me to, here I have my main goal of increasing student enrollment, and then I break it down further into, other smaller objectives of enhancing website user experience and engagement. And then I drill it down further into the even smaller ones where I could potentially attach measurable metrics to those so that I can measure, like implementing simplified navigational structure. And I'll kind of touch on that later on in my talk a little bit. So, objectives. So, KPIs are important. KPIs measure how well you are achieving your objectives. They are quantifiable. So they allow you to track your progress toward your objectives. They answer the question, how will you know if you're on track or not? Some content strategists believe that your KPI should actually be tied to your pieces of content, right? So you can actually measure how well you are achieving your goals, right? Because each piece of content should ideally be associated to a goal that you have for your website. And then one of the most important things that I think we jump into the content strategy, sometimes we don't think about the personas. They provide a concrete representation of who your ideal customers or who are interested in your website. I actually think you should print out a copy of your personas and have them visible. So as you're working and managing and dealing with content, so you keep them in the forefront of your mind of who your personas and the people who are your money makers or who are visiting your website. Now, do you need a content strategy? I definitely believe you need a content strategy to hold your goals and your objectives, but there are also many other documents that make up your content strategy. You have your standard operating procedures, you have your content audit. Maybe you reference them in your content strategy document, but I do believe you should have some sort of document. And then you have other supporting documents that kind of make up your content document, your content strategy. So now that I've talked about content strategy, your goals and your objectives, I kind of want to talk about governance. It is the framework and the processes that we put in place to manage your web content. There should be workflows in place so that people know how to manage your content updates. And so involved in those, just as important as your governance, you should have, just as important as knowing who your personas are, you should know who the people who are responsible within your web governance, right? You have your content owners who have a vested interest in ensuring that the content is correct. You have the developers who are building out the components. So knowing who the roles and responsibilities are provides that clarity, and so everybody knows their responsibility when it comes to governing your web presence. We all know about style guides. How many people have their style guide readily available to access when they need it? How many people update it after, say, a year? Okay, so less hands. So brand guides are usually built initially when a website is launched, but a lot of times we don't actually go back and look, because as your business changes, so does your digital presence. So you should, as best as you can, and I believe that when you do it, you should have a group of stakeholders who are vested in your web presence to make changes to those style guides. It shouldn't be just one person who decides to update the style guide. It should be agreed upon by the group of the roles and responsibilities that I had previously talked about. Accessibility. I believe that accessibility is a social responsibility, and it builds a better digital world for all of us. And this can be done through semantic HTML, alt tags. We all know how to deal with accessibility. There are requirements. We follow the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So I think it's important, and also important with your documents. You should make sure that those are accessible and that everyone can have the ability to read them. And I'm not going to go down the editorial journey, but I do believe that you should have a workflow and a process and documentation to keep track of your social engagement, right? Knowing where your users are where you can reach them. Is it LinkedIn? Is it Blue Sky? Having an editorial calendar, even having brainstorming sessions and knowing when and where you do that and how you create content is important. And this is, to me, where I probably spend a lot of my time with the content management. In order to have a streamlined process, you should have in place content management workflow. And having a solid content management workflow allows for you to identify the difficult points or the decision points where your team won't have to think about it or struggle or go to someone else, right? So, example, identifying what qualifies as a critical content update. Is all the content is all the content there? That's another decision. Does this work need graphics or not? Does it need a video? Having it stepped and staged out in a workflow so that your team is clear on how they work with their content is so important. It makes it so much easier. It reduces the ambiguity in the questions. And to support that workflow, you also need a request form. I've seen a lot of teams who manage it even with emails, group emails, and that's my worst way to manage, where they manage it within an email system, and then at the end of the week they dump all of that information into a spreadsheet. You should be using a system, whether it's Monday, Trello, Jira. Track it. Metrics matter. You capture the script, the title, the reporter, the assignee, priority, and the artifacts, because it serves as a reference point for later when you have to make decisions related to your content. And metrics rule. So this slide is referencing the metrics that are used to make decisions, looking at like Adobe Analytics, how many people are visiting your website. But they provide that valuable return on equity, and they are important. I use them with content audits, which I will talk about a little bit later down the road. And so I briefly mentioned the metrics related to your content, but there are also metrics related to the performance of your web content teams. So if you're using a tool like Jira or Trello that is keeping track of all of the different content updates and requests that you are getting, then you have the valuable metrics to determine like how well is my team performing for a month, right? How many tickets are they completing? Who is my best web content specialist who's knocking it out of the box with finishing the tickets, and how many per type of ticket or content request? Like, what are the difficulties? You can even see the lulls per month if you track your data correctly. So I just want to say that having data and using a system to track your web content updates is so important. So this is I just wanted to show the level of detail that sometimes, that I've had to go with some of the projects. This is a web content team that handles probably 300 web content requests in a day. And responsiveness is very important. So we care about the total tickets we receive in a day. We care about the types of tickets we receive in a day. And then how many, it lets me know how busy is a team, the work in progress. So if you're working with a team who's dealing with that much content, the data like this at this level, it may seem really detailed, but it helps us react quickly when we're working on various tickets, and it helps us determine what's in priority and what's not. And then within your content strategy, you will do content audits. And content audits is where you inventory the content that you already have that exists on your website, you evaluate it, you recommend, and then you repeat it, and you repeat. And it's up to your organization because your content strategy is unique to your organization. I've listed some tools like Screaming Frog and Site Improve, and I'll kind of touch on how those are.
When you say recommend, do you mean recommend keeping, archiving, deleting? Like, what does that mean to you?
All of that. So you collect, when you do a content audit, there are certain data points, right? How many people visit the website, right? That might be one. If it's a page, when was the last time this page was updated? That's another metric. So those are some of the metrics that you can take into account when you're doing your content audit to determine if it's even going to the actual page and looking at it, and is it readable? Is it using plain language? Those are some of the metrics that you want to keep track of within your content audit to ensure that it's serving the needs of your digital users. So I read a wonderful book. It's called Content Strategy for the Web. Has anybody read that book Okay. So I got this. I was already doing it, but it just solidified and just validated that what I was doing was correct. So in this book, she mentioned she worked at Facebook and she was responsible for content auditing. But she talked about there are two ways to do content audits. The first one is a quantitative content audit. And when you do a quantitative content audit, you don't really care about what is on the site. You just care, you care about the types of things that are on your site, right? So you care about how many HTML pages. You look at it at a high level because sometimes at a high level, you can identify some issues at a high level, such as missing meta keywords, and you also use other tools like Screaming Frog or some other tool that will allow you to scan your site and evaluate it. Screaming Frog will also connect to your analytics, and so it'll give you that analytic data. And so I use the quantitative audit to kind of show me the high-level problems, the broken links, the accessibility issues. And then the second one is the qualitative audit, and that is where you actually go page by page and you actually take a look at it. Is it relevant? Is it useful? Is it following your brand? Does it align with your brand? Is it written so complicated that, keep in mind, most people read at a 6th to 8th grade level. So writing clear and plain language is important. And so you look at your page at that level, and you would create I've created a spreadsheet that keeps the URL, and then I have the metrics such as SEO, the ones that you care, how many people are visiting your site, how readable is it? You assign a value to that. And then when you look at this, then you can identify the pages that you actually want to improve on to improve your digital presence. So there are some things to keep in mind. Like, just start. If you have a website with thousands of pages, just starting is the beginning of improving, right? Whether you do a qualitative audit and you scan the site and to identify all of the issues you have, or just start and incrementally improve. Use your metrics to inform. Use them to inform internally, and use your your external analytic metrics to inform about how your content is doing. Buy-in. This is the one where I'm like, because it is so difficult to do a content audit if you don't have buy-in from your stakeholders or from the people who are the content owners. You have to have buy-in to improve your content. You can do a quantitative audit and fix the little things like SEO related things and the small things, but if you really want to improve your content, you have to get buy-in. And then that leads into the fourth one, finding a way to communicate the importance of content audits. And I've had people do town halls, like monthly content, Drupal town halls, to get your users engaged in your content. That kind of helps. Webinars to kind of get them interested in improving, and metrics. Bring the metrics to the table, right? Sharing the metrics and the problems that exist. People really like numbers, and they want you to quantify the problems that exist on your website. So find a way to communicate that and incrementally improve and keep going. So these are some of the digital tools that I use. How many people use Adobe Analytics? I'm just curious. One. Okay, Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics. I've used SortSite for 508 compliance. Site Improve. How many people use Site Improve in here? Screaming Frog is a tool that we use to do the quantitative audits. I want to see what's going on in the website. And Adobe Acrobat is excellent for 508ing documents. Hemingway Editor, I use if you're a content editor and you need to improve your content and make it plain. Crazy Egg is like a heat map for your website, and it has wonderful metrics. And then 4C, like the user data that you receive from people who are coming to your site and providing you that useful data. So I say all of that to say that you've got this. Great content is not an accident. You have to actively work at it. It is about planning and maintaining it. And this is my contact information. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on email or LinkedIn. And are there any questions about content strategy?
Can you do email Nneka?
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I used to have Screaming Frog and I loved it, but there were some security concerns. Is it on FedRAMP, you know?
I don't think it is not FedRAMP. No. But why would it have to be if it's running externally and scanning the site?
If you're working on an internet,
Yeah, for anything.
Like on your laptop.
if like any agency internet, if it's not FedRAMP,
Ah.
like we have site improve on our public facing, but we can't get it approved for the internet.
Okay.
It's the same thing with Screaming Frog, like we haven't been able to get it either because it's not that way.
Yeah, I've heard somebody say that.
Yeah.
So what are you using to do the?
Google Analytics, Site Improve. Yeah.
Andy.
Who?
Andy.
Andy?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. I'm gonna have to write that down. Okay. Any other questions?
What tool do you like to measure ADA compliance?
Is that accessibility? And Wave. So at the page level, the Wave plugin. I've used Paley, which is an open source tool, but it takes some developer intervention to get it running. I talked about SortSite. That's another tool that you can download, and it's useful for 508 compliance, and it runs as an application on your desktop. Anybody else? I feel like I'm in a room full of people who manage content.
Editorially, the Drupal module is really great.
Yes, it is.
Feedback for content owners. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. If there aren't any other questions.